Klingon opera. Altonian brain puzzle. Oh yeah. Bounds not steamed or fricassee. Triphasic cloning. Oh yeah. Garanian itchin bugs. Oh yeah. It's time for the rules of acquisition.
Hello and welcome to the Rules of Acquisition, a podcast where we will be talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. With me, as always, is James Nolan.
Hello.
And Hugh Crawford.
Hello.
And today we're talking about the second episode?
A Man Alone.
Or are we talking about the third episode?
We are talking about the second episode written and filmed, but the third episode aired. So I think on all of the DVDs and on Netflix now, it is officially the second episode. But if you ever go by like IMDb or anything like that, it always has it marked as the third episode.
Nobody remembers watching it as it aired and insist.
Yes, I distinctly remember that the past prologue was the second episode. I'm sure there are many people that do, but you're less important.
Yeah. Well, I might agree with them, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Past prologue is a better episode, so.
Well, I've got the description right here for everybody following along at home. Man Alone, Deep Space Nine. It's listed as episode 3 on IMDb. It aired on January 17th, 1993. The description is right here. Ibudon, a criminal/murderer Odo has dealt with before, returns to DS9 only to be murdered shortly after, leaving Odo to be the prime suspect. Meanwhile, Jake and Nog's troublemaking prompt Kiko to do something helpful for the station's children. Oh boy. So we got an A storyline and a B storyline, and we actually have a C storyline that is not really listed here, but kind of touched upon, where it's Julian fighting over Jaxia with Captain Sisko, even though Captain Sisko is not really fighting at all. And I think that's pretty much the overview of this episode, right, guys?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That's how it opens, with him hitting on Perry Farrell, right?
Right.
Perry Farrell is just doing the Altonian brain puzzle. Mm-hmm. I get the feeling, I don't know, most of my notes about this was written about sex. I don't know. That was the thing that it seems like that was because the A plot is so boring and weird.
Yeah, a little bit.
That
I was just like,
we're talking about the murder plot.
The murder plot is so boring and solved so weirdly that
okay, let's just stop to let's just go straight ahead to how this thing is solved. Okay. This bugs me because I don't quite understand. I felt dumb. Like, am I dumb? Because I don't understand how I still don't know how the murderer got in and out of the room. Okay, spoiler, Ibudon, or however you say his goddamn name.
Ibudon.
He's found dead in his room, okay?
No, he's found dead in a holosuite holodeck hooker house.
Yeah, getting a fleshy kiss massage.
That's what it was. Might as well be his room.
And apparently you can use holodecks for porn, which has not been touched on before.
Yeah.
No.
That's just a no-brainer, I mean.
Exactly. And then you're like, immediately, like, that would be all the soldiers, or all of the soldiers on the Enterprise and everything would be doing all the time. And it would be a problem.
Yeah, you never see a UV light on the holodeck for a reason.
Riker falls in love with that one, didn't he? That, he was.
So did Geordi.
Yeah. But it's not like some sort of weird webbed hand woman licking your bag. I mean, that was like...
Hey guys, aliens are into weird shit.
They are into...
Yeah.
Well, and the bad guy aliens are into weird shit. Well, that's what they're telegraphing to us there, right? Basically, is that we know he's a bad guy because he's into some kinky shit.
And he was a bad guy because he ran medical supply, black market medical supplies or something.
Right.
He was like a Harry Lime from The Third Man.
Yeah, but he let a child die, and Odo never forgot that, and that's why he hates him.
Yeah. And killed a Cardassian soldier who wouldn't be bribed to let him through.
Right.
Did you guys notice how Odo doesn't sound like he smokes a carton of cigarettes a day in this episode? Like, that was an acting choice that what's his face comes up with.
Rene
Auberjonois.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, he sounds like he's been smoking for 200 years later in the series, but in this episode he has like more of the actor's natural timbre to his voice.
Mm-hmm.
He sounds like the villain on Benson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny that.
Did you guys notice that? Or is it just my imagination?
I did, and I actually was going to say that I think he's great. Like, he's great in the show. And in this, and his scenes with Armin Shimmer and Quark are great.
Quark, yeah.
So I'm not going to say that a lot on this episode, so I want to get that out front. Those two scenes are great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I forgot how early they set up that, like, yeah, they're enemies, but they're but Quark actually likes them and goes out of his way to help them out.
Yeah.
But, I like that.
That's good stuff.
So this murder is solved because the guy in question is not actually, is just the dead guy is a clone, and the murderer is the original criminal guy.
Right.
And all the frame. So how did he get in and out of the room? Just because.
I think that because they have the same DNA, the DNA readers would just read it as one person.
If they went in at the same time.
Yes.
They say, if someone went in. But the problem is, if they went in at different times, it would still log each time. It's all about logs.
Right.
And who went, yeah.
Yeah, that's dumb. Because if I've got two files in my trash can on my stupid 2015 computer, if they're identical files, it still says I have, two files.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's that. And then I guess the thing that I was like, well, what about in the bedroom if they didn't see two people come in on the Bajoran ship? Did he cook up the weird Cronenbergian clone thing? Did he do that in the room on the space trip to Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, because, there were two bunks in his chambers.
Yeah.
And they only found...
And that was very important.
That was very important. But they only found one set of DNA in there, but there were still two people sleeping there. The problem was...
What are you telling your clone to coax them on this thing?
That's that's my question. Is like, how does cloning work? Because you can grow a fully formed adult clone, and it has like its own consciousness. Because at the end they just say, we grew another clone and we just sent it off to live its life, but it's a grown adult. Does it have all his memories, or is it like little?
That's what I was wondering. Because at the end, Bashir just did it on a lark. Well, let me start cloning a motherfucker to solve this case.
Right.
And I was like, don't you have to get like some sort of approval for that? Like, you've just created a life tub to crack a case for no reason. And at the end of it, I was just like, well, I guess he's there. We can put him down again. Like, we can put him down when it's over with. He's just a clone.
No, but they go out of their way to say it's still murder if it's a clone. And that's why they send Ibudam back to jail, because he killed a clone, even though it was his own clone. It was still murder.
Right.
Okay.
Once they grew half a clone, and they couldn't that gets in the whole pro-life debate.
Yeah. When does a clone become a clone?
Yeah. What
exactly?
Right.
Like, at no point was the ethics of what Bashir was doing was it ever questioned. Like, they at no point said, what the fuck are we doing?
No.
Isn't there another way to do this without creating a human being and being responsible for him?
Yeah.
It's almost like he walked into the solution ass backwards, like something that was growing in his fucking fish tank. And then he really he didn't know until it became a humanoid.
Humanoid. He cracked the case then.
Right. Okay, so this episode has got a lot of the stuff that we were talking about in episode 1, where they're telegraphing very hard that this is in fact a Western. You've got an angry mob. You've got a murder, a small town murder mystery. You've got a frontier school marm, literal school marm. Yes. And you've got like the frontier children that need to be, that are too wild, And you actually have O'Brien replicate an old-timey school bell, and that he like replicated and wrapped up and gave to his wife. This is everything that I hated about Star Trek Deep Space Nine when I was watching it live, and none of the stuff that I liked about it in the rewatch. Because it's like Star Trek is supposed to be going adventures in the final frontier, and this is just a frontier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These characters feel stuck. Everything that happens on the station has no real consequence. Cisco is supposed to be this powerful guy, on the station, but he's just kind of relegated to arguing with his doctor about whether or not he could date his old friend.
which I totally want to unpack because I've got all kinds of
I want to
ideas.
talk about that whole subplot too because I have.
Yes.
Go for it.
So,
Let's go. What are your thoughts?
are we ready for it now?
Yeah, let's do it now. Why the hell not? We've already
Okay.
established that this is a boring ass Wild Wild West.
We already established the A plot is dumb.
It's dumb and boring, and we should avoid it. Okay, so
yeah, let's go into this. Yeah.
So first off, like she is Perry Farrell is
Right.
is okay. Are we supposed to view Julian Bashir at this point in the series, at least, as like sort of like Ryan Howard from The Office?
Well, we're not supposed to view him as Ryan Howard from the Phillies.
But like BJ Novak's character, are we supposed to view him as like this, like
Just because he looks kind of like him?
No, I think he's supposed to be like this dumb little shit who's constantly trying to like impress everybody or think he's like overly smart, and he's always thinking with his dick and always trying to impress. Like, are we supposed to view him as like
upstart?
He is unlikable in this episode. And in the next episode, which I watched ahead out of the confusion of the episodes, like he in that episode is like he's as dumb as a box of hammers in that episode. And on this one, he's treated.
No, I think what they're trying to do with having his background being a British person he's Indian in this, right? Even though the actual actor is. So what they're trying to, like British India.
He's Eastern Asian. He's Western Asian.
They're trying to telegraph something about colonialism. They're trying to do something here with colonialism by having this character have that sort of background, and then having him in this context. Does that make sense? Do you guys get that feeling?
By being just sort of like a dumb blonde? I mean, like what? Like a stereotype of like the dumbest type?
No, of how like whenever like colonialism is bad. That the natives the whole idea of the noble savage is bad, and the people, it's that old story. You know what I mean?
Right. Because like even in the first episode when Kira's like, "Oh, you're going to come in and save the heathens or whatever," and makes him feel bad. Right.
His ignorance is rooted in that. And there's like cultural ignorance.
Well, like in privilege or in.
Yes.
Okay,
that's where I'm coming from.
I could see that. No, I agree with that.
I think they're trying to do that in some sort of ham-fisted way that they can't exactly wrap their mind around at this point.
Okay.
And it and also casual misogyny. I think that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I want to talk. Well, the whole Jadzia, Dax, and Trill thing in the context of Star Trek in general, which is interesting.
Well, yeah. Well, this was the thing. I did try. I said earlier that I was going to try and find old Usenet groups on the internet as they talked about it, and that was one of the things that was talked about on Usenet a lot. Is that the Usenet was full of a lot of LGBT people who were interested in Star Trek and were very excited about where the Trill storyline could go.
Right. Because in the first episode, I was like, oh, this is the closest thing to not a gay character, but even just a bisexual character that they've had. And then they totally, any hint of that from the first episode is totally gone, and it's totally kind of like heteronormative.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, so she says some bullshit that trills are somehow above sex, and they don't view relationships that way, and he should stop hitting on her. Now, if she's just using a line to get this dumb shit off of her, that's cool. But in a future episode, we will see that, and even in this episode, he talks about Cisco talks about when him and Curzon went and shagged those two Roji.
Right. Oh, let's stick with the inconsistencies of this episode, because I think that's enough to unpack.
Yeah, but
they talk about with Curzon and doing like even every person, every character, everybody in this whole series at this point just accepts it. Like there's no way that there could even be a bisexual character. Aliens, they fuck things of all these different species, but they're like, well, she's a woman now. There's no way that she could be with another woman or vice versa.
And like, I know you don't want to go forward, but can we go back to when the Trills were first introduced in The Next Generation?
Sure.
It was Beverly Crusher fell in love with a guy who was a Trill.
Yeah.
And fell in love, and I think they had sex. I think they fucked.
I think so.
And then he died on some sort of mission, and then she goes and visits. They're like, we saved the Trill. And she goes in, and it's a woman. And the woman's down for it, to be with Beverly Crusher, but, Beverly Crusher's like, well, no, this is over with now. Which I get. It's up to her. But I mean, like...
But it's like, if even the writers... And going back, let's just bring Berman into it for a second.
Yeah. Let's not shit on him.
Just in the Bajorans in general. Like, I went back and I looked, the Bajorans were introduced with Michelle Forbes, right?
Forbes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole reason they have the easy makeup where it's just the brow ridge was because Berman was like, she's a hot lady.
She was pretty.
We don't want makeup that makes her ugly. So let's give her the least obtrusive makeup so that we can have a hot lady still be a hot lady, which goes back to that theory that you kind of floated out there that we haven't talked about yet on this podcast.
Yes.
That maybe he was just trying to hook up with Michelle Forbes.
He wanted Michelle Forbes in the show real bad.
Let's not ugly up this woman. Let's make her hot and let's give her this cheap, easy prosthetic. And that paid dividends when they had all these billions of Bajorans later on in Deep Space Nine.
It sure did.
They don't have to make that much makeup, except when they have Cardassians.
Yes, it's just a dollop of putty. It's not that much.
Yeah, and they have even less in this. They don't have the full trilobite
Yes.
that she did initially.
Yeah. Yeah, you basically ignore it. It's just there as a signifier so that, these people are Bajoran. Which is nice when you're watching cloud scenes and stuff like that.
Which goes back just to the whole thing that nobody in this universe can even accept the idea. Which, at the time this aired, if there were, it would have been a huge deal. People would have had a big reaction to having even gay characters at all. The people in the Usenet groups are on board, and, but like the culture at large, it would have been like a huge, thing.
So yeah, we're talking about how this Star Trek universe is basically hamstrung by the conventions of network television in the mid 1990s.
So then that brings me to the question of, why is it out of the realm of possibility of Cisco to fuck Jadzia and Dax?
Well, I think he realizes that it's like, just because there's an attractive woman on the station doesn't mean she's a prize to be fought over.
Wait, so you think he's being altruistic?
I think he just is an adult, and that's his friend, and he can be friends with a woman.
Right. Well, they make a whole thing in this episode of him still getting used to the idea of her being a woman at all. He still thinks of her as a man, and he has to get over that because she's a woman now. So he's not even ready to fuck her, even if he were into it.
Well,
it's not that he's above it. It's just like, oh, this is weird because you used to be a dude, now you've got boobs.
Well, even in the writing of it, where it's like Curzon used to beat me in hand-to-hand combat or judo, something judo.
Yeah,
I'm like,
made up.
Jadzia still could, like, don't assume that just because it's a woman,
right,
that she still can't kick your ass. Like it's just casual. Like, it rubs me the wrong way. It's like 15 years ago, people were like that. We don't want to think of them like that in 2015, but much less the 24th century or whatever it is. It's bogged down in its time, I guess.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird, with the ideals of Star Trek and the Udic or whatever, Idic philosophy that is one of the core principles.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Infinite diversity and infinite combination or whatever.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, like, it is a weird sort of pansy-ass way of dealing with the storyline, but they do deal with it. I think that at this point, with the way that Dax was written, where she was like she was being like kind of a sex scold to Bashir. And then, like, I remember the thing that I like most about the character is that she was kind of a sex-positive character.
Right.
So if that is something that you're actually trying to find, is a sex-positive woman who's not treated as a whore or slut or have daddy issues, she was one of those characters. I mean, that's true. She goes after Worf. Like, there's the whole storylines about Kurz. There's a whole storyline later, and I'm not saying enough to spoil it, where they come back and Curzon had some sort of affair that he was sleeping with a married woman or something like that, and it goes into all of her sort of sexual past. It's a really good episode, but like...
Yeah. Well, I don't think they're coming at it from like any ill will. They're just like totally ignorant of any other perspectives,
Or any other way to write a woman that's going to have the respect of the audience.
Right.
And I think that was the thing, is that why...
That's it. They're still worried about her, like, instead of worrying about her agency, they're worried about her virtue.
Yeah, and on the emissary, and the first episode, she comes out and like, what's wrong with me fucking Bashir? I'm flirting with Bashir.
Yeah.
Right.
And in this episode, she's like, oh my God. And I can get that if the guy she ain't into the guy, feeding him some bullshit. I get that.
Right.
But the show doesn't show that. The show just shows that she's now that Trill's views sex on a higher plane or something, and that he's just being base. And I thought that was a way of just trying to make her. Well, if we have someone who's sex positive, no one likes to watch Star Trek for all the dirty sluts, you know?
oh, how little you know.
They did not see the coming of deviant. Oh, maybe that's a testament to how much television has changed since then. Because every show's got to have the dirty sex positive slut on it now.
Well, yeah. Well, even Voyager, when it was going concurrently, it was all people doing weird shit about the hot Borg lady, Jerry Ryan.
Oh yeah,
right.
Who was married to the politician that Obama beat in 2004.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, his the person he beat for Senate was her husband, the actress's husband,
right.
7 of 9's husband was a Republican politician in Illinois, and Barack Obama beat him because he had to pull out of the race because he kept trying to have sex with Jerry Ryan in public.
Yeah, he was into some freaky deaky shit.
Okay,
Yes. So he had to pull out, and they brought in Alan Keyes. I remember that. So anyway, so that's where I'm I was disappointed with the whole sort of Trill sort of story and why they aren't. I mean, any number of ways you could go with that. She could have homosexual leanings. We've talked about that. You know, they later settle on she is an adventuresome woman later on. She marries a Klingon.
Spoilers.
So, spoilers. So, I mean, that's
it's like the show's been off the air for well over probably 2 decades now.
Well, still, we're still trying to steer.
Yeah, okay.
We don't want to use up.
Edit that out.
Nope, staying in. Sorry, nerds. Well, the nerds know. I don't know why I'm apologizing to them.
One thing I wanted to get into is in like a
Wait,
post.
before we get too far away, do we know what steamed asna is and why it was talked about so much?
Yeah, right? I wrote that down too. Steamed asna.
Steamed asna. That implies there's another way to eat asna.
Yeah, fricasseed. Oh, he goes over some of the options.
Fricasseed, rolioed.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He turns full Bubba Gump on him, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I got my steamed asna out of the way.
So, what in a post-capitalistic society where resources are basically, everybody's got an endless amount of personal resources, right?
Uh-huh.
And what's the point of giving a gift?
I wrote that same thing down.
I'm sure Keiko could just where am I going to keep this shit?
Honey,
she could just disintegrate it.
Into the trash disintegrator.
Put it in the trash, and then when he asks where the fucking bell is, she could just replicate another one.
I wrote that she opened it. She was so happy, like she'd gotten a real gift, that I was just thinking, oh, you punched some shit into a computer.
How thoughtful,
honey! I packaged up for you a Google search. It cost me nothing.
Right?
I wrote that down too. I was like, who gives a shit?
Who gives a shit? What a shitty. So, what we know about O'Brien, right, at this point, is that he's a shitty gift getter.
Oh my God, you're going to turn this around on your shit talking of O'Brien.
Well, that's another thing I want to ask you guys real quick, okay? And on the first episode, we established some of the characters that kind of get on our nerves.
Yes.
In this episode, the second episode and I'll direct it at James, because how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much did Nana Visitor get on your nerves?
Not as much as on the next episode. Next week, I will double barrel on.
Okay, but this episode, she seemed like she was pretty reined in, right?
Yeah, she was just the exposition. Like when Cisco asks a question, she knew the answer. I mean, she was playing just straight William Riker in this episode,
right?
Or less So the next episode is much more Nana Visitor focused.
And I would say that I'm on the same, O'Brien got on my nerves slightly less.
He didn't.
Wade, did anybody get on your nerves this episode? What did you?
No, I loved everybody.
The writer Michael Piller got on your nerves.
Oh yeah. I was about to say he's a pillar of the writing staff, but then
yes, he is.
Then I kind of gagged a little bit, and then I told you about it.
So I will say on your subject of O'Brien, I think what I like about this show over any other Star Trek thing is like that scene between, is that O'Brien's a real person. He's got a wife and his wife didn't want to fucking be here. He took a promotion and it fucked his wife out of her career. That's a real conversation that happens to people.
Yeah.
And I think that whole argument between them is real.
Right.
That's a real marriage argument. And I like that this show takes the time to like, hey, there are real people in this world. Not everybody's just happy robots.
That's true. But it's also like, hey, you know, the tedium of provincial station life is very real.
Yes.
And our squabbles are a part of that tedium. So,
well, don't they later on in they just have an episode where everybody's so bored they go play baseball for an entire episode.
Yeah, they have to fit some, holodeck episodes that people groan about 10 years later.
Yes.
At least they didn't pull Sherlock Holmes in. They just pulled in.
It was just enough tedium to have that shock of recognition, that allowed it to be somewhat enjoyable for me. The kids got on my nerves. Jake, poor guy. I mean,
right.
But the Nog and Jake and the whole, like, I could care less about their Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer-esque adventures in the old Western town.
We got itching bugs, but they turn people different colors. And then we get scolded.
We go to the promenade and order something that looks like a turtle penis on a stick.
But you're right. Yeah, that's the same sort of shit that irritates me. It's like we have to show that station life is boring.
Yeah,
for teenagers.
Though I believe this is the first. Well, it's the second episode, so it's not that surprising that this is the.
We're gonna go through a lot of firsts.
Yes, this is the first appearance of Nog's dad. Rom.
Yes,
yeah.
Rom. Yes.
Who seems to have a different characterization at this point. He's not like...
retarded? I mean, mentally challenged?
Yeah. He's just like he's your typical Ferengi at this point. Like, oh, I don't want my kid going to a Federation school. As opposed to the kind of like...
Right.
Oh, I kind of think they have some good ideas, Quark?
You're wrong. Your Rom is spot on.
Thank you.
That's kind of spooky.
Okay, we have a go-to Rom impersonation.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Hey, somebody get Wade back on because get this Rom guy off our podcast. Oh, that was really good.
This is the first introduction of the. I don't think in the first episode they did mention that Odo has to sleep in a bucket.
Oh, they do? They do mention his bucket, yeah.
Every 18 hours?
Him and his fucking bucket, bringing it up every chance. Yes, we know. We know about your bucket, Odo. You don't have to bring it up at every...
Well, I think it's used as like his embarrassment, right?
Right.
Like it's like his handicap, so he always has to like, he's embarrassed, so they bring it up as like a humbling tool.
Well, which is kind of fucked up. Hey, you know what? We got something we called sleep, which is basically the same thing before. Same thing as a bucket. You know what I mean? We lie and practice for death is what it is.
Yeah, but people have piss buckets.
Oh yeah,
when people have piss beds. It's also embarrassing.
Oh,
he sleeps in his Does he eat or shit or anything?
That is a good question.
That comes up later.
Yeah, I believe he does not.
And I know it comes up later, and I know this other thing comes up later, but they basically allowed possibility that Odo could fuck or something.
Oh yeah, they talk about like he's got some issues with women.
With women
here. Yeah, he's like, oh, women also always do this. I'll always do that.
Yeah, you never end up doing what you want to do. You always want to do what they want to do. Right. And I was like...
Yeah, more casual misogyny.
He's been in a relationship. He's been hurt by Klingon opera at some point.
Yes.
You want to listen to this nice thing. They want to listen to Klingon opera. You want to do this. They want to listen to Klingon opera. Like, he's clearly not...
He had a bad relationship in his early 20s that has tainted him.
Hey Odo, how about you just don't fucking date a Klingon?
Or anyone that's into that stuff.
Well, here's the thing. It seems like Star Trek, from its very inception, has a concept that it's bogged down with in every iteration since then, which is the concept of the special man. Spock, first special man. Data, second special man. Here we are. Deep Space Nine's quote-unquote special man is
Odo,
and his special abilities are what's going to be utilized to drive a story or move a plot along at various times.
Quite thoroughly as the show goes on.
Yes. To actually, and so I feel like that concept, I think, kind of wears me out with some of the original episodes and some of the Next Generation. Like, good, another Data episode. Christ Almighty, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's always the character who has to learn what it is to be human, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like I like that they don't bog us down with that stuff right off the bat with Odo. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you're right. It is. I mean, I have to say, with all of those characters, with Renee Auberjonois, with Leonard Nimoy, and even with Brent Spiner, who is a pretty good actor on the show.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's a great actor on the show. They cast the best actors to play those roles. I could definitely imagine worse actors making that shit way more tedious.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I do remember just in general when I watched through the series before, Odo does get wearing.
Yeah.
And not just his relationship with the Dominion. There's a thing called
spoilers.
Light spoilers. Not his relationship with the Dominion, but also his
the other one.
His the other issue with him. And like it does get very wearing.
Yeah.
And
the interesting thing about Odo, if we're talking about the special characters, is he's the only one of any of the Star Trek series, including Voyager and probably Enterprise too, though I haven't actually watched Enterprise, but
nobody has. I think Hugh may be the only person that watched it.
Yeah, I was going to get to it, and it didn't get to it. Apparently, it has a good last season. Or
in fact, that's the only season I haven't seen. I've seen the first 2 seasons.
Well, the people that hate the Brandon Braga, apparently, that's a whole other thing. Apparently, the last season is good until the last episode, and it screws the pooch again. But what I was saying is, he's the only of the special men who already has to learn what it is to be human or whatever, but he's already got emotions. The other ones, like Spock, it doesn't have emotion except when they're in Ponfar.
Yeah.
Data's a robot. He's already an emotional guy. He's a curmudgeon. He's a grumpy old man.
Yeah.
And Voyager has the Doctor, which is actually great. He's got emotions too, but he's the best part of that show. But that's a whole other podcast.
It's clever. That's a clever character for the show.
And then I believe the Enterprise has another Vulcan.
Yes.
He's already, when the Doctor even starts, he's just a program, and that's all he is.
Yeah.
He gets it later, but yeah.
No, I agree. I think he actually he has his own positive qualities that the other ones don't have. I don't know. I really like Odo. He does get a little tiresome later on, but
I like that he has a philosophy. I like that he comes off with a point of view. I am never, and I'm not just his origin of where did the shapeshifter come from that was found in the Dolores belt. I'm interested in how did he get to this position in this political climate? And I don't know if they ever, maybe they do. I don't remember.
But they touch upon that later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unpack how he actually rose to prominence.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously he's handy because he's a shapeshifter.
Well, that's it. Is that part of he's just really fucking good at his job.
Yeah.
Turns out if you want to be an investigator, being able to look like anything really helps you out.
Exactly.
So, and during a wartime or an occupation time, his ability to gather intelligence is pretty much unparalleled on either side, Cardassian or Bajorn. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And I mean, it's sort of the it's sort of the Aaron Sorkin school of drama. How do you get good conflict in a drama series is by creating two very smart people with very passionately felt point of views that are opposed to each other. And I think they create that with Odo.
Yeah.
And I think that Odo has that, but he may be the only person in the show that does until later when Worf comes on. Everybody else is all kind of just the typical Federation wishy-washy.
Right.
Sisko isn't a man of, he's a man of strength and character, but he isn't his whole thing is he's malleable. He can play the angles, which isn't always the greatest drama in the world. Nana Visitor has, Kira has a strong character, but not necessarily a strong point of view
Right.
that she ever defines and stays with. Odo is the one that does.
Yeah.
Odo and Quark.
Yeah, I was about to say
Quark is Quark is very smart and has a very distinct point of view.
Well, they're both pragmatists.
yeah.
And that's like actually probably Star Trek's very first
pragmatist.
right, both of them. And you know, and whenever Odo realizes that he's the prime suspect, like he's the first one to realize it.
Yeah.
You know, he immediately sees how this is going to go down, and then realizes he's probably been framed because he knows he didn't kill. You know,
he knows he didn't kill. But in that scene with Cisco, which is a great scene, by the way, but there's elements to this A plot that's pretty good. But in that scene with Cisco, where Cisco calls him in and tells him that he's cut off the case, he says, you know, that doesn't surprise him.
Yeah.
And he says, why, you know, like he was like, you know, Odo, I don't believe you did this. And he was kind of like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You don't know me. You don't know me. And all the evidence points to me.
Yeah.
Why, you know, he's thinking of it like Odo. Like, why wouldn't I be?
Yeah. He gets irritated when other people aren't as pragmatic as he is.
Exactly. Why would you believe in me?
I wouldn't believe
right.
it. I'd be, yeah.
Because that ultimately, the key to somebody who could survive is being pragmatic.
Yes.
You know? And I think...
And he's had to survive. I mean, him and Quark have had to survive through so much weird shit from the, you know, I assume, how long were the Cardassians ruling Bajor?
60 years.
60 years. How, and so he rose up the ranks through Cardassian rule?
Yes.
So like he was found by Bajorans, right?
Yes, that's correct.
He was found by Bajorans and then eventually just rose up the ranks in Cardassian rule.
Right.
Why did they trust him?
I don't think they had a choice. I think if you could look like anything, you
that goes to something we were talking in discovering this, reading about this episode, the Michael Piller wrote the screenplay, but someone else pitched the story. Let me look. Give me a second. Gerald Sanford pitched the story. And when he pitched the story, he pitched it as Odo is the Bajorans come to Deep Space Nine and accuse Odo of being a Cardassian collaborator in their sort of genocidal bit. And that was what the original story was supposed to be. It was supposed to be like a Judgment at Nuremberg type situation.
That's super interesting, actually.
Oh, that sounds a lot better.
Exactly. I was like, this is like, like it was supposed to be a Judgment at Nuremberg where there's all this evidence, you know, of some sort of case where he was complicit or involved with some sort of genocide, just genocidal activity from the Cardassians against against Bajorans. And that he had to sort of defend himself and that he had to use that's so much of a much more interesting storyline. I can't believe. I feel like later on they do go in those directions.
Especially for a second episode. The first episode, Emissary, is so good at setting up the arc of the series.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And even I remember as I was watching it as a little kid when I don't know, when this came out in 94? I was
93.
93, I was like 13 years old probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even I remember watching subsequent after like that first episode, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like a 2-hour premiere of an arc of a long story.
Mm-hmm.
And then watching it as it aired, it was like, oh, all the stuff I was excited about in the first episode is not a thing anymore. It's just
right.
a regular episodic
right.
thing, and they just forgot about that stuff.
Yeah, and that's how they ruined a lot. That was like, you know, I guess X-Files started around this time, 92, 93.
Yeah.
And they would do that too with these interesting storylines with the space aliens and Mulder's sister and all of this stuff. But then they would just, no, we're just going to take that off and, you know, we're going to have little side episodes. And like, it wears you down over 20, because they had to do 22 episodes.
Right, yeah, they're doing network.
We think of like this great TV shows now in our era where, you know, they're 10 to 13 episode seasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're great. And if you're watching British TV, they're 6 episodes.
Right.
Right.
So, you know, and my favorite series this year is a Catastrophe, which is the British show Catastrophe with Rob Delaney. And it's literally 3 hours. You can watch the entire series in 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And it's great. And there is absolutely nothing that's not great on it because it doesn't have to like have these episodes, you know?
Right. Well, that's what I think is interesting about Deep Space Nine. as a prequel to the golden age of television.
Right.
Yes.
Because it kind of sets up this whole thing. But yeah, it's rocky. They're still working under the old rules.
And later on, when they have this like huge events going on in seasons 4, 5, and 6, and then they just take a couple episodes off.
Yeah,
you know,
we're gonna put Quark in a bottle episode.
Yes.
Because we got a small budget and that's all we can do right now, which is
Exactly
how bottle episodes always work.
Well, they can still work better than, because there's a great bottle episode later on with Worf and the Jemadar that it's my favorite episode of the whole show.
Oh yeah.
but yes, we won't talk about that yet. For the years, but yes,
just laying some crumbs.
Yes, lay some crumbs down on how good this show gets, man.
All right. I don't know how much more we can talk about the boring A plot, even though we agree that it would have been a lot better if they'd stuck with the original pitch.
I don't even have any good trivia about this episode. There's like nothing interesting.
I think the pitch was pretty good. Hearing about the initial pitch.
The pitch sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
that's some pretty good trivia.
And your little insight into Usenet groups at the time. That's good.
Oh, yes. I'm learning how to do that, so I'll bring more Usenet stuff in for later episodes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, before we go this out, I'm curious just if either of y'all we might not think this is the best episode. So okay, well, what would you do about it? If there were anything you could change about this episode, what would you rewrite or just do differently?
You go first, you.
All right. Well, yeah. I tell you what, this is what I do. The Little House on the Prairie shit. The problem is real. Okay, I understand that they need, she feels like they need to have some sort of show, but they have a holodeck. This is what I do. O'Brien, instead of making a shitty bell for a present, goes and programs a 1980s high school John Hughes program for Keiko and Nog and Jake, and they have to enter a 1980s high school every week to get their education. That's what they have to do. On the holodeck. That would be what I would do. Because, I don't know, have Keiko be, obsessed with the 1980s or something. You know how they're always in the Star Trek universe, somebody's obsessed with something that's removed 10 years from the actual time it was filmed?
Yeah, right.
That's what I would do. In 1993, you would have somebody have a height, and everybody's wearing pastels, and then you got Nog hanging out with somebody who's got a huge Aquanet type hairdo in class or something, and then Keiko's wearing fucking shoulder pads and stuff and teaching.
Somebody has a hypercolors t-shirt.
Yes.
Well, no, that's 90s.
Either way,
that was concurrent. That was when it was airing.
Yeah, that's what I would have done instead of this.
I think that speaks towards fixing a problem that you have with the show.
Well,
that I never really felt. No, that I've never really felt before, but I mean, you're convincing me a little bit, is that the show is too claustrophobic on the set.
Yes.
And if they find a way, though, yes, that's not
it's
about
so gray and Soviet.
Yes, it's gray and Soviet and weird, and they don't ever go anywhere. That, yes, that would be the best way to do that. They do that well later on, but for this time period, for this time in the show, anything they can do to visually break out of the show would be welcome.
Right. But this time they just spent probably how much money on the sets for the series? Yeah, you said before that this cost more than the fucking movie did?
More than the Final Frontier.
Yeah. So they're like, yeah, we spent $1 million,
which is one of the better movies.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, The Undiscovered Country. Final Frontier is when they find God. That's not one of the better ones.
No. Wait, is it? Wait. Yes, you're right. Undiscovered Country. I'm sorry. I personally think that Undiscovered Country is one of the better movies.
I do too. Yes. I'm with you, but yeah,
the Final Frontier is not.
No. But we digress.
Yes.
All right. So what would you change, James?
Oh. That's a really good suggestion, Q. He's infecting me with his suggestion.
That feels like a whole other episode. Just scrap the A plot, and just do a school plot in the John Hughes movie.
Yeah, how much? I guess I'm gonna go with how much they actually This is such a mess of a story.
Yeah,
and I'm generally just not a fan of A plot, B plot, C plot structures, but they had to do it. So why did they gloss over so much crap? It's hard to point out because this episode is ass. But if you're gonna have a cloning thing to figure out the plot, make the show about cloning.
Yes, that's something that Star Trek.
That's a good point.
The Next Generation did very well.
Yes, make it about the ethical issues of the shit you're doing to solve this thing. And it's essentially just a Scooby-Doo plot. Who murdered the guy? We gotta, it's so boring.
It is a Scooby-Doo.
And it's so... They literally pull the mask off the guy.
Right. That's what
and I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you pesky kids and your shapeshifter.
Make it about that. Okay, if it's about how Bajorans are sketchy with Odo, or Odo's uncomfortable with the Bajorans' animosity towards the murder of Cardassians, make it about that. Any number of things, but don't make it about everything.
Right.
All to the service of a Scooby-Doo plot.
Well, I think the whole thing is, it's like they're really going hard into the paint with the Frontier Pioneer shit. Because they had the Frontier Pioneer mob that got angry at the sheriff.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, constable. Whatever.
The constable. Which, by the way, in that scene where they're throwing bricks and Cisco dodges a brick like a boss, like that was like, every now and then it's like Avery Brooks is personally making decisions to make his character look cooler.
No, that's the thing, is that Cisco often, the episodes where he has very little to do, and this is one of them, which is weird because it's his show ostensibly, and this is the second episode, but he makes these choices that remind you that he's fucking charismatic,
Yes. The way he delivers the fricassee line about steamed Osna.
Yeah, his delivery bugs me sometimes. Fricassee, where he just raises his tone, and when he gets excited, he goes, okay, and just does that. Like, that kind of irks me a little bit. But I do agree Avery Brooks is great, but sometimes I'm just like, oh.
He's an overactor.
I'm the opposite. I love that weird shit. It makes me feel like he's like a real person.
See, the first episode I said before, like, I bought it when I read it as PTSD. Just totally him throwing a mood swing in there, like, okay, I'm doing great. And just like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. See, okay.
Well, I think in life you find a way you find yourself in a situation where if you're in a bad, boring situation, like a shitty job, like we've all faced in our lives, I think you find a way to say, I'm either going to double down, which I think is what the fricassee line was. He was like, Avery Brooks clapped his hands together, rubbed them together, and says, I'm in this scene. I'm in it.
Yeah.
and he's going to overact. Or you just disengage. Like, I don't know, like probably Avery Brooks in season 7. But nonetheless, you sort of just disengage from... No, I don't remember. I'm not making an informed. He probably is. I don't know. I'm not making an informed. The show's great, but and he's great in it. But I think that was him just saying, I am going to give this show energy. I'm gonna pump it in. And he made that decision when because the direction was probably duck the bricks, guys, and Avery Brooks had to do that sort of Sam Jackson cool, like sort of head shift he didn't look like he gave a shit that a brick was thrown at his head.
Right.
That was cool. And so I think that he's trying to find those ways. And I think I've read before that he wanted to he has a shaved head. That's the way Avery Brooks has always looked, with a goatee. And they didn't want him to have that. They wanted him to have just, straight from central casting black man hair. Probably not to scare grandma from her shows.
Right.
Like all of a sudden this scary black man is now running the Federation and grandma's scared.
Right.
So they made him look like Barack Obama in these first 2 seasons, but I think later on they let him go back to the way he was after Pulp Fiction, I believe, and the rise of Sam Jackson. So it was like, why don't we just make you Sam Jackson? And Avery Brooks was like, that's what I've been fucking saying.
That's what I'm talking about.
I was Sam Jackson before Sam Jackson. So what would you change, Wade?
Well, all of your considerations are great. If we're stuck with the episode we have, I would have just resequenced it and not made it the second episode. Oh, wait, they did that.
Yes.
Because it does a bad job of setting the scene for what life is like on the station. It's like they just jump straight to Odo's crime scene.
Yeah.
Instead of like if they made it like, okay, now we have to have a Nuremberg trial because he's been on serving with the Cardassians. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But as a second episode, they just jump straight to this like character.
Yeah,
point. We haven't gotten to know what the life is like here.
That you're right. That would have made a great. If when that show was pitched as the Nuremberg trial, that would have been a great way because it would have been like, dude, there is so much shit to sort through.
Yeah.
Before getting to like a normal situation, before getting to an equilibrium on Deep Space Nine, there is so much, it's like the Marshall Plan. There's so much shit that has to be dealt with that we're consumed with that all the time.
Right.
And that would have been interesting for a 5, 6, 8 story arc in a 22 episode season.
Yeah, because Emissary ends and they've had a radical shift. They've moved the station next to the wormhole. There's a wormhole now.
Right.
They don't mention the wormhole this whole episode. They're just like, oh, this is what status quo is like.
Oh, they don't, do they?
No, they don't. And they do in the next episode, which was the aired second episode, which was about the wormhole. But also, you now have Avery Brooks when did they get into that Avery Brooks is, viewed as the man who brought the wormhole to Bajor, and that's like the special status that is involved with that?
Exactly, yeah.
And there should have been a lot of unpacking about this because it just seems like, you're right, at the end of the first episode, they're like, okay, this is going to become the last stop in the road of the tomorrow, It's the hotel at the end of the world. And that'll get a lot of traffic from that. But none of that is dealt with, or it's dealt with is like them saying, well, look at all these strange people that are here now because of the, because of the wormhole.
Right.
So they haven't actually unpacked anything. You don't get to see them go through that struggle. And oh my God, this episode is, this is going to be the bearer of like bad episodes. We're on episode 2.
There's some good ones though.
As we approach an episode, this is a particularly bad episode. This is not a status quo for how the show will be. We can now, when we're watching a bad show in the future, we can say, is it A Man Alone bad?
Right.
Oh, I feel like there's some worse ones than this one.
I think this one's going to be the benchmark for a while, though. Wade.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I hope so. I hope most of them are better than this.
Definitely through next week, because I've watched that episode.
All right. Well, I feel like that's a good teaser to leave on there.
Yes.
For, nobody that skipped ahead, I hope, with this series. It's been available to view on Netflix for as long as Netflix has been around. But, I think this is a good place to stop.
All right.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
Nope. We'll see you guys next week.
We'll see you next week with a past prologue, I believe is the name of the episode.
Awesome. Can't wait.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
All right.
And goodbye.
Do we have to clap?
Nope.
Please follow us on Twitter at AcquisitionPod and on Tumblr at the Rules of Acquisition Podcast.tumblr.com. Send us an email at rulesofacquisitionpodcast@gmail.com. You can turn this off now. It's pretty pathetic that you are still listening. Do you not have friends, or a hobby that is not Star Trek podcast related? That is possibly why people are fearful for the future of our society. We believe in you. We know you are better than this.